Welcome to the Chad Prather Show, Tuesday afternoon. Thank you guys for hanging around. We'll talk quick. We got a lot to get into. Some called it reckless. They said it would never pass, but with a 51-50 Senate vote and J.D. Vance breaking the tie, President Trump's big, beautiful bill squeaked its way through the swamp in the Senate. And what does it promise? Well, we're going to talk about that. I mean, I've heard different numbers tossed around, $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, deep cuts to bloated welfare, EV subsidies are gone, overtime tip earners are rewarded. I mean, people are melting down over it. I don't know. The left is melting down. The media is in a panic mode. The old guard Republicans are choking on their own irrelevance. Some people that would surprise you are having some problems with this. And I don't know. Maybe this isn't just a bill. Maybe it's a declaration of war. I want to break that down and talk about some of these things. What we'd love to see is something that's absolutely against the administrative state. But today, we're going to try to figure that out together and also get an update from Florida's all-new theme park for illegals, Alligator Alcatraz. President Trump's leaving the swamp today and paying a visit to the swamp. That's right. We're going to see what's going on down in the Everglades. And, of course, the feud, we've all heard about it, between Trump and Elon Musk seems to be heating back up. So we'll see what's going on with that. And Elon's threatening to form a brand new political party, the America Party. We'll see if that's a good or bad thing. In just a moment, policy analyst Phil Kerpen's going to join us to help us break down some of the elements of the big, beautiful bill as we work to make heads or tails of our political and financial future. Before we get into that, let me mention our friends over at Allied Oilfield. Go to alliedoilfield.com. They are industry leaders in the oil and gas company, as well as the trucking company. They build out a lot of equipment, man, a lot of big equipment over there. And they've been doing this thing for over 2 decades out in Levelland, Texas. They are a name that a lot of people trust for design concepts as well as getting the actual equipment out into the field and the stuff that works and works well. So go over there and check them out, see what it's all about at alliedoilfield.com. Let's start with, sort of the America First narrative. This is what putting America first looks like, right? So if you take Trump's tax bill, you prioritize the working American, you cut the taxes, protect small business, you're rewarding hustle, which is the overtime and tips, which I still don't really know what I feel about that. Overtime, I like. Tips, And we won't get into that. The left hates it. And I like a lot of things just simply on the fact that the left hates it, because those people don't think right. And the left hates it. And I'd love to see you guys in the chat real quick. Yes or no, are you encouraged by the bill or no? You don't have to go into why just yet, because I want to talk a lot about the whys. Why yes, why no here in a little bit. But I would like to know, because again, at the end of the day, what you're wanting to know is it going to affect your bottom line? Is it going to affect you financially? Is it going to hurt your family? Is it going to take away your rights? Are you going to steal any freedoms? And I would love to see you guys in the chat, hear what you have to say on that deal. If you get into this, and if the left is gonna hate it, why are they gonna hate it? They hate it because hopefully it's gonna shift power away from bloated bureaucracies, as Phil was saying. It's gonna get away from those massive tax hikes and back into the wallets of the American workers. And if you look at this, the $4 trillion in tax cuts, when you're talking about not spending, when you're talking about people keeping their own money, and the breaks for the tips and the overtime, hopefully that's a direct boost to the working class. Is it a good idea? Is it a novel idea? Waiters, drivers, nurses, factory workers. Then you get the ending of the EV tax credits, which is something Elon Musk is sort of feuding with Trump about over that. And Trump has come out and said that he knows. Elon knew that he was going to be campaigning on that the entire time. Hopefully we're done subsidizing Silicon Valley billionaires and Chinese battery plants. And, I'm pretty sure Elon Musk at this point can survive without any taxpayer charity. And, what we've got to do is hit back at the less fear tactics. And so I'm going to look at the chat here. I want to see what you guys are thinking. And I see several of you say that you like it because the left doesn't like it. And what we've seen, just like with the tariffs, I don't think you're going to look at an immediate impact. Chuck Schumer's talking about people are going to die. That routine is tired, Chuck. Babies are going to die. Children are going to die. They always go to the extreme examples. They said the same thing in 2017, if you'll remember, when Trump passed the tax reform. And what happened then? We had a great economy. Trump calls it the greatest economy in the history of the country. I don't know that that's true, but the economy did soar. So let's let Americans thrive through opportunity and not through government dependency. Let's see if we can pull Phil back on here. I see him on there. Let's see if we can get him back and see if we can get the audio going. Phil, are you still there, buddy? David, can you add him on? Who knows if any... Oh, okay. Well, we'll just wait a little bit. Let's see if we can do it or not. If not, we could get him back on another time. But always technology, man. I'm telling you, we live with the devil in technology. It's amazing the stuff we can do. Yeah, that's fine. And let's see. But then you got Collins, you got Tillis, and even Rand Paul. You know, if Rand Paul's going to vote against something, I'm always going to pay attention to what Rand's doing. I try to pay attention. And you can just take him off of there, David. We'll get him back. Voting no means voting, in my opinion, to keep the swamp swimming. And if you don't support cutting taxes and shrinking government, then, you've lost the plot. Now, I don't like to believe that about Rand Paul. Rand's libertarian streak can excuse a vote that protects bloated programs over empowering the people. I don't think there's a problem with that, with him being a libertarian. The issue that I have with most libertarians on a whole is they don't really know what their policies are sometimes. He's certainly one of the better ones. And then, of course, the media is going to say 49% of the people in America oppose the bill. Well, hell, how can you say that? Most Americans haven't even seen the real benefits yet because the media frames everything as doom. So just like with the 2017 tax cuts, again, support goes up when the paychecks go up. I said at the very beginning, if you'll go back, you can see back in November, I said the only way you're going to win people over is to show them success. I said, with the tariffs, I said, you're not going to know for 6 months. I was pretty close to that. We started to see that $88 billion getting infused back into the economy from external sources because of the tariffs. I'd say it was a pretty good boost. It was a pretty good shot in the arm. And it almost took about 6 months. I think with this, you're going to have to take a little time to see. I said, if you'll give Trump time to cook, just give him time to cook and get some success out there. Because when you get money in your wallet, when you start getting things, successful in your life again, you start seeing policies that work, well, suddenly the labels of being a racist and a homophobe and a xenophobe and a transphobe and all those things, it doesn't really matter. Because, again, people forget labels when you start seeing results. When the grocery bill is lower, people remember who the hell had their back. So, if we can reframe the cuts, the Medicaid, the food stamps, the student loan cuts, suddenly there's, college graduates out there in their 20s that suddenly have decided or suddenly have been, gotten the realization that, Joe Biden's whole cutting your tax or your student loan ain't just going to go away. It's not just going to be forgiven. It's called ending dependency and restoring dignity. Everybody in this chat, I'm reasonably certain that every one of you, I'm going to look over here and just see. I'm reasonably certain that every one of you believes in personal responsibility, right? I think that every one of you would like to look back at your life and say, I accomplished that, I built that, I did that. This was something I did in my life that left a legacy. Isn't it cool when you don't have dependency and you have dignity, you can look back with pride? I think Americans want jobs. I think they want jobs and not handouts. Student loans, you borrowed it, you paid it. It's that simple. Welcome to adulthood. These are the kind of things that I think this bill is going to accomplish. It gets rid of the nonsensical crap. Now, I didn't do enough, in my opinion, against the Green New Deal. I think it still is very charitable towards the climate cultists, and that's exactly what that is. So this isn't a big, beautiful bill because it pleases the lobbyists. I think it becomes beautiful because it gives Americans their power back. That's the potential that's built into this thing. Now, right now, for some of us, it might be an ugly swan, but I think, an ugly duckling, but it becomes a beautiful swan. Rapid Response 47 said the deficit will come down through economic growth. Steve Moran explains that the CBO score, which falsely claims the one big beautiful bill will increase the deficit, is ignoring. So if we could play this clip, let's see what we got here.
The deficit will come down through economic growth and other policies that we're implementing. Let me tell you all the things that are not included in the CBO score that are getting ignored by the doubters in this process. There's better revenue from economic growth that I just mentioned a moment ago. That's about $4 trillion. There's going to be about $3 trillion of tariff revenue coming in, too, that because they don't come in through the legislative process, they don't get counted in the score. But those $3 trillion are as good as any other dollars for bringing down the deficit. There's about $1.5 trillion of further administrative cuts. These are things like reduced headcount at federal agencies, the government becoming more efficient, doing more with less. And there's also another about $1.5 trillion of reduced interest expenses because we're borrowing less for all the other things. You add all this up, you get to about $8.5 to $11 trillion of growth across all of these different means of, $8.5 to $11 trillion of reduced deficit from all of these means of bringing the deficit down. And it's all in all, combined, extremely powerful. And so it's very, very powerful deficit reduction. It'll bring the debt to GDP ratio down by over 20 percentage points relative to what the CBO expects.
So, I think if you give people's power back, and if the House, the GOP's got to be ready to name names and primary every traitor who stands in the way of prosperity. I mean, we need to look at that. We really need to look at that. And that's the unfortunate thing about American politics and bureaucracy right now is we don't know who stands with who and whose pockets are getting lined or anything else. Let's see if we can get Phil back on there. So let's talk about something I alluded to a little while ago, talking about how we're basically paying for the world's drugs. We're talking about, many of our allies, our European allies, they benefit from U.S.-funded medical innovations, but they only pay a fraction of the cost. And a lot of times that's a lot of years later. Should we be calling that like global freeloading? What's happening? What is the situation there?
Yeah, well, basically, the only place in the world where it costs, in many cases, literally billions of dollars to develop a new drug and bring it to market. Because for every one that actually makes it, you've probably got 5 or 10 or a dozen that don't make it. And so you've got to spend so much money on developing drugs, testing them. And then when you sort of average across the ones that don't make it, for each one that does make it and actually makes it to market, the cost is literally in the billions of dollars. Now, the only place in the world where you can make back you spent on R&D and get a return on capital is the United States, because all the other rich countries have some form of price controls of government price setting, and they set the prices much lower than it actually costs to develop new drugs and bring them to market and have a return on capital. Now, they set them a little bit higher than the marginal cost. So if you're the drug maker, eventually, usually a few years after it's in the U.S. market, you say, yeah, we'll sell to you at the price that you set because it's a little more profit for us. We'll make, you're paying more than it costs us to make one more. But that only works because it's the U.S. consumer that's paying those big costs of developing those new blockbuster drugs. Now, we also, by the way, have a much better system than the rest of the world for getting generics to market quickly. And so we have this weird situation where we pay much more for brand drugs in the U.S. than they do, for instance, in Europe and other rich countries. But we actually pay less, much less, for generic drugs. And so, we're paying that big cost to develop those new drugs. But then after, when the patent expires, we're actually paying some of the lowest costs. And when you get a generic, it's usually, $10 or whatever it is. They don't have that for the most part in Europe because of their bureaucracy and regulations. They pay much less for the brand drugs because they get a free ride on us. But then they don't get the benefit of those super cheap generics that we get. They have their system is very out of balance. Their system can only exist because of us. Okay, if we didn't exist, there'd be no new drugs developed. The drug pricing system that the other rich countries does not justify the costs of developing new drugs and bringing them to market. That's why the president says that Europe is getting a free ride on us, freeloading on us, essentially. They benefit from all the medical innovation that we're paying for, because we cover those of research and development costs, all those dry holes that are dug for every time that you actually develop one that works. Market. And they don't get them right away, as I said. The drug companies won't sell for until later, but eventually they get them, and they get them very cheaply, and they didn't pay for them. And so what the president has said is, look, we're going to pay the lowest price that any other rich country pays. So if another country has a government set price that's very low, we're going to pay that same price. Now, I actually think that this is a bad solution to the problem for the following reason. If we say, hey, France only pays this amount, so that's now what we're going to pay in the U.S. Well, if you're the drug maker, you have to stop selling that drug into France, right? Because now if you sell it into France at that price, it automatically undercuts your ability to earn a return on investment in your main market, the market that drives everything. And so now you're going to say, look, I can't sell into these price controlled countries anymore. Now, in an ideal world, that might result in those countries getting rid of their price controls and meeting us in the middle. But what I think is much more likely to happen is they'll actually seize the patents of these companies, and they'll issue compulsory licenses, and they'll just have someone domestic or someone in India or China just basically steal the patent and make the drugs. And then we have a more acute trade crisis. We haven't actually solved the problem. And in fact, if that is what happens, we would actually pay higher prices in the U.S. rather than lower, because instead of getting that little extra profit from selling over marginal cost, they'd be making nothing in these other countries. And so what I think we need to do, I think the president's kind of half right. This is a huge problem, but I think we need to approach this the same way he did in his first term with NATO, when he went to Europe and said, look, you have to pay your NATO dues or we're going to whack you with a massive tariff. And they eventually caved, and they're sort of, a lot of European countries now meeting those targets or on track to meet those targets. I think we need to do the exact same thing for prescription drugs. We need to tell the other rich countries, especially the European countries, look, you've got to agree to a certain percentage of GDP that goes to brand drugs so that you're sharing the burden with the United States of developing new drugs and bringing them to market. And if you don't, then the big reciprocal tariff that's coming, that can't come off. And that we need to, I think, make this really a central part of our trade negotiations, because this is one of the biggest non-tariff barriers to trade we have with Europe. The reason we have a massive trade deficit in prescription drugs with Europe, I think it's something like $150 billion. The reason we have that is they don't pay for our drugs, and we do pay for theirs, because
it's like a
European
70-30.
and the U.S. companies make all their money in the U.S. market.
Yeah, it's like a 70-30 split. I mean, we're paying 70% of everything on there. Is that right?
At least. Yeah. I mean, we're really the only place in the world where we have a pricing system that is market driven. And so, the amount of money that goes into developing these drugs, that kind of determines what you can charge in the US for the most part. And of course, some of these are very, very expensive when they're first developed. Like, all these companies that develop these hepatitis C cures, when they first came out, they were like $70,000. Okay. But you no longer have hepatitis C, right? I mean, when you've actually cured a disease, the high cost makes sense. And the great thing about the U.S. system, which I think is much better than the system they have in other countries, is we have very high prices for a limited period of time. Then once you have generic entry, the prices come way, way down. And I think we should actually do a lot more, particularly for the biotech drugs, to make it easier to get generics approved. So it's more like the small molecule drugs. We can get them to market quickly and bring those prices way down. But, imagine that the whole rest of the world, the other rich countries, the European countries, imagine they had the same pricing system we do, instead of just having government bureaucrats set the prices. Now, instead of the only place in the world where brand drugs can really get a big return on investment, now that would be spread across all the rich countries. And so, number one, you'd get a lot more drugs developed because there'd be a lot more return on investment. But number two, in those categories where you have multiple companies competing, you're going to have much lower prices, because they're going to be able to get their return on capital, and there's going to be that competitive pressure to bring down prices. And so we'd kind of meet in the middle, in my judgment. Europe would pay higher prices, we'd pay lower prices, but at the same time we'd get more drugs rather than fewer, because overall there'd be more money going into R&D. And so I think we need to have a positive solution to this. It can't just be we're going to be like them and we're going to have price controls also, which of course is what the Democrats want to do and tried to do with Inflation Reduction Act. We can't just say, hey, the other countries have price controls, so we're going to have price controls too. Because if we do that, there's nothing to get a free ride on, right? If we're not paying for developing new drugs either, there's nothing to get a free ride on. And so the solution's got to be to play hardball on trade and to really force the other rich countries to pay their fair share, and then we'll get more innovation, more cures, and we'll meet in the middle on price. And so I think Trump's kind of mostly correct about identifying the problem. I don't totally agree with his solution. I think it's got to be hardball trade negotiations to get them to loosen their price controls. And Chad, a lot of people have said to me, like, no country's ever going to agree to pay more for drugs, so this is pointless. And I think that's wrong. First of all, in USMCA, Trump actually got Canada and Mexico to agree to pay more for biotech drugs as part of that agreement. Nancy Pelosi made him remove it before they passed it in the House, which is completely insane. I mean, it's like, imagine, I understand hating the drug companies because I fought them every single day during COVID, but the idea of hating them so much that you don't want them to make money from other countries, if that means they'd be able to charge less in the U.S., that's like insane. But Trump did basically do this to a certain extent in USMCA, even though Democrats made him take it out. So I think that's proof that it's possible. But I also think just look what happened with Canada a few days ago. I mean, this was incredible. It wasn't drugs, but this was tech companies. And this is another one of the huge, technically it's not considered a tariff, but a bunch of countries, Germany has the worst of these at 10%, but the UK, France, and Canada tried to have what they call these digital service taxes, which is basically a sales tax on giant tech companies with their like advertising and other service sales. So basically the way they wrote these taxes, they say, it applies to any company that has over $1 billion in sales or over $750 million. So they set these numbers based on global sales. They only apply to like Apple and Google and Meta and just a handful of companies that are all American companies. And then they say, it's not a tariff. This applies to every large tech company, except there are no other countries, right? So what they're basically doing is just taxing American companies and pretending that it's not a tariff and that it's not a trade barrier. And Canada was going to do the same thing that a lot of these European countries are doing. And in fact, they did one of the craziest versions I've seen because they said theirs was going to be retroactive to 2022. They said it was supposed to be as of June 30th. So it was supposed to be when you hit June 30th, all these tech companies were supposed to pay like a $5 billion tax to the Canadian government, like as 3% of their sales going back to 2022. And Trump said to them, look, if you don't repeal this, there is no more negotiation. We will not have a trade deal. I will just tell you what the tariff is, and that's it. It's that. And they repealed it the day before it was supposed to hit. They said, no, come back, Shade. And so when we play hardball on trade, Trump is absolutely right. Every country in the world wants access to the U.S. market. And when we play hardball, we can get them to move on. It's not just about tariffs. There's a lot of misperception that it's, their tariffs aren't that high or their tariffs aren't as bad as ours. And by the way, Canada does have some very high tariffs also. But this is really about all of the unfairness that is visited upon America in sort of the arrangement of things. And Trump has said, with these digital sales taxes, you're not going to do it, period. And I hope that what he did with Canada is now replicated with a bunch of these other European countries. That the other huge non-tariff barrier to trade is how they free ride off prescription drugs. And I'm hoping he'll play the same hardball game on that and get Europe to pay up, like they're starting to finally for NATO. They should do the same thing for medical spending.
Yeah. What he did with NATO last week, I think, is a good idea in terms of defense spending. He's got an opportunity to demand that those folks pay their fair share for medical breakthroughs that we're developing as well. Phil, listen, thank you for coming on. Sorry for the technical difficulties, man. And keep us abreast of what's happening out there. And maybe we can get some accountability on these guys across the globe that are taking advantage of us. And we can stay, an innovative leader in this part of the thing. And we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, look, I hope that we can get this. I hope we can get this done in a way that means Americans pay less, but we get more drugs, not fewer, because we're close to so many breakthroughs on cancer and Alzheimer's, so many things. And the Democrat policies on drug pricing are so destructive. You look at what they did in Inflation Reduction Act, and there were like a dozen cancer drug trials that were canceled immediately after that, because the idea that government is going to set the price and so you might not be able to get any return on investment at all, that can't be the answer. That will lower prices. Of course, if government comes in and brute force lowers prices, that will lower prices, but at the expense of destroying the cures that we need and that we want to live longer, better, happier, healthier lives. And so, if we could get the rest of the world to pay in, and they pay more and we pay less and meet in the middle, we could do it in a productive way that gets more cures while Americans are paying less. And so I think that's got to be the focus. And to me, that's like one of the top 2 or 3 things in our trade negotiations with Europe. It's got to be very high on the list.
Well, Phil, thanks for coming on, buddy, and keep us informed on what's happening, man. We'll get you back soon.
Yeah, maybe we'll get.
What was that? There we go. All right, we got it. This technology, man. What's going on in the chat over here with you guys, man? I know some of you guys, you're like, that was like taking a sip from a fire hydrant, and some of you guys just want to smoke weed and get better. At the end of the day, that's all you guys care about. You're like, forget these pharmaceutical companies, man. But listen, he makes a fair point. When we're paying for the rest of the world, this is one of those deals. And you don't even. I guarantee you that nobody out there even realizes we're paying 70% or 80% of the drug prices out there that the rest of the world's benefiting from. That's why places like France don't have generic drugs. They don't need them. They're getting the name brand stuff cheap. You know why? Because we're paying for them. We paid for the innovation, billions of dollars to get it to the market, get the research and development done on it, get the approval for it, and then we're marketing out there across the board, and they're getting cheap drugs. And we're the ones paying for it. I mean, America, dude. America. And so when you look at the big, beautiful bill, you look at trying to put America back to a first place in terms of emphasis on its economics and everything else it's doing. And Elon Musk obviously has a problem with this. Let's talk about this America Party thing just quick. Elon Musk vows to make sure every member of Congress who campaigned on reducing government spending but voted for the big, beautiful bill loses their primary in 2026. This is Colin Rugg. Says they will lose their primary next year. It's the last thing I do on this earth. Elon's sort of losing it. He's having a little episode of Asperger's here. Pretty strong threat that's there. And scroll back down. Let me look at the tweet there again. He says the odds that Elon Musk, let's go back, right now, go all the way back up to the top, right there. Let's see. Says everybody who campaigned on reduced government spending but voted for the big, beautiful bill. So he's convinced that this is going to be more spending. And it could be. I talked about that yesterday on the program. It could be. We're hoping that it's not. I think we've got to look at this thing. Donald Trump obviously responded. Trump kind of escalated. I started sounding like Party Foul Steve there. He escalated this little online feud of saying, well, why don't we just turn Doge loose on Elon? He says, I don't know. We'll have to take a look on deporting him. Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. He gets a lot of subsidies. He's upset the EV mandate is ending. So
that might have to go back.
Keep on going. Yeah, go ahead and play it.
Back and eat Elon. I don't know. I think we'll have to take a look. We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies, Peter. But Elon's very upset that the EV mandate is going to be terminated. And you know what? When you look at it, not everybody wants an electric car. I don't want an electric car. I want to have maybe gasoline, maybe electric, maybe a hybrid, maybe someday a hydrogen.
I've consistently told you guys, I said it this morning. We talked about this on the Dear America program. And I've encouraged everybody that over the years, over the last year especially, Elon Musk, I wasn't a big fan of him. He's not a conservative. He's just anti-woke. He says the things that you like to hear, and you think he's conservative. He's not conservative. I mean, Donald Trump's not conservative either. Not in the grand scheme of things, not truly by definition. He's a Democrat. He is a classical liberal. But Elon Musk is not conservative, and he hasn't been. He's just anti-woke. So don't get those two things confused. And now he's going to come out there and talk about starting an America Party. If the big, beautiful bill started, he's going to start a third party. I also said this morning on the Dear America program that this is something that's not good simply because you've got to get to the root of the issue. You don't just start grafting limbs into the tree. You don't just put a third branch on, a third party on when the two are already corrupt because they're coming out of a foundation that is already bad. So I got a message here that I really think needs to be heard loud and clear. And this is one of those things that you don't get lost in the world of X, because again, Elon Musk, the America Party, that's a bad idea as it stands now. I mean, I've come to respect Elon's flair for the dramatic as much as the next guy, but before we pop champagne and march under a new banner, I want to pump the brakes and talk a little bit about history. Because America doesn't have amnesia. At least we shouldn't have such a short memory. We've got a short attention span, but we need to call back some of our history because we've been down this exact road before, and it's a dead end if you don't fix the system first. You remember Ross Perot? I alluded to that this morning. Billionaire outsider. He had the charts, the whole thing. Kind of reeks of what we've got right now between Trump and Elon. Billionaires come in. You always got to be careful when a billionaire inserts himself in every conversation. You got to test them. They got to be vetted. Ross Perot comes onto the scene, 1992. He comes on like a hurricane, and he's preaching common sense. He's talking fiscal responsibility. You go back, every one of you probably would have agreed with most of what he had to say. People loved it. He captured 19% of the vote, but he didn't win a single state. And the reason is because the two-party system isn't just a competition, it's a cartel. It's like Coke and Pepsi locking the fridge and saying, sorry, RC Cola, you're not allowed on the shelf. And Bill Clinton got the election 4 times over George H.W. Bush. Then you had Teddy Roosevelt, war hero, trust buster, big stick, all that stuff. Buck stops here. When he, speak softly, carry a big stick. When he tried to come back in 1912 with the Progressive Bull Moose Party, he split the vote and handed the presidency to Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow freaking Wilson, who is no doubt, if you know your history, he's the worst president we've ever had. He was the founder and the father of the progressive movement. You say, I didn't like Obama, I didn't like Biden. You wouldn't have had Biden and Obama if you didn't have Woodrow Wilson. Because he gave us the Federal Reserve, he gave us the income tax, and we played ourselves here in America. Now you got Elon's going to come with his rockets, robots, and his righteous indignation and all these little buzzes in here because he's quirky and he's weird and all that. And here's the harsh truth. You throw a new party into a broken system, and I don't like the party system. I don't like the two-party system. I don't. But it's built on a broken system, and what you're doing is you're pouring jet fuel onto a car with a blown engine. You're like, that sounds cool. Wow. No, it's going to rev the crowd, but that thing ain't going anywhere. Because the problem isn't just who's in power, it's how power operates. I'm going to say that to you again, okay? Let it sink in. The problem isn't who's in power, it's how power operates. Because who's really in power is the unelected bureaucratic class, and they're untouched. And then the alphabet agencies, and they're unchecked. And then you still have the corporate media, and they're still gatekeeping. You still have election integrity that doesn't exist and ballot harvesting, which is still happening in a lot of battleground states and across the country. Probably happening right here in Texas, to be honest with you, because we still got stupid voter machines in every county. Now, if you want to fix this, somebody will fact check me on that, I know. But we still got the machines going in Texas. But if you want to fix this, you don't slap a new logo on the swamp and call it freedom. You got to drain the damn thing. What happened to drain the swamp? Drain the swamp. Don't build on top of it. Bulldoze the muck. Clean out the cesspool, rebuild the system that was designed by the people and for the people, not for tech billionaires, not for establishment careerists, not for the deep state paper pushers hiding behind procedural red tape. Now, what Elon should do, this is just my opinion, sitting in the corner of my studio here with a cowboy hat on in, Podunk, Texas. Honestly, what any patriot with influence should do is help us get real election integrity. That's where we got to be, because we got to. That's the issue as far as I'm concerned. Because you don't know who's voting for who. We don't know. Maybe we have red cities. I don't know. You wouldn't know that because the polling is always going to push to the left. And have you ever been polled? I don't know. Has anybody? I'm going to look in the chat. Has anybody ever been polled? I'm just curious to know. Anybody? Anybody ever been polled? I'm going to see yes or no. I've never been polled. I've never gotten called. So I don't know. Maybe we don't have blue cities. I know when I go to big cities and I walk around, unless it's somebody out there in a protest or something like that waving a flag and somebody's crazy acting like a retard, then I've run into some people that are definitely blue. I've seen plenty of septum rings and thigh tattoos and purple hair. I've seen plenty of that. But I'm talking about just your average rank and file, normal, everyday, common sense citizen that's out there pushing for responsibility, like we talked about earlier. I don't see a lot. Like most people, they're not crazy leftists. But we don't know that because we don't have election integrity, and we don't know if our polls and our returns are even actually true. We do need to push for term limits, which you would have if you had election integrity. I'm convinced a lot of these people get voted out. Get rid of the taxpayer-funded lobbies. Get rid of these lobbies that are in there putting people like Lindsey Graham and Dan Crenshaw and all these other guys consistently in there so they become permanent Washington. We got to dismantle the administrative state. These bureaucrats are not going away. They're like parasitic leeches on society. You got to cut the strings that turn elected officials into puppets of their donors. But ultimately, you want to talk about adding another party to the deal, you got to fix the machine before you try to win the race. Let me hear from you in the chat. I want to see. Never been polled, never been polled, never been polled. Never been polled, never been polled. Never been polled, but my butt is an exit only. Thanks, John. You know, here's the deal. Right now, you got the machines that's rigged. Our political system is a machine that's rigged. You got a third party that comes in. It doesn't just risk splitting the vote. It risks splitting the country even further. And so let me tell you this. Here's the problem that I find with Elon talking this type of rhetoric is this country's already a house divided. I mean, we are hanging on by we are fractured and we're running out of duct tape at this point. Like if I say to you term limits, or if I say to you splitting the vote or election integrity, we've said those phrases so many times. They're important things, but they've become white noise in our heads. So Elon, listen, man. We appreciate the hustle. I do. I admire the courage, and I do appreciate the contribution you've made in the last 6 months. But before we start branding America Party yard signs and stickers and all that, let's make sure the ballots get counted honestly, the swamp gets drained thoroughly, and the Constitution gets respected fully. Who's with me? Yes or no, float an American flag in the chat. Yeah, people are still talking about weed in the chat. That's good. That's fantastic. I love the Chat Prather show. If you don't fix the foundation, no new party's going to save us. It's just going to be another pretty sticker slapped on the windshield of a truck that's about to drive off of a cliff. You gotta fix the system first. Then we can talk about revolution. Until then, truth, liberty, Constitution. Let the swamp know we're not buying the snake oil anymore. So these catchphrases aren't gonna get it. All right, Trump went down to the swamp. He went down to the Everglades today. He's checking out Alligator Alcatraz. I went over to ChatGPT yesterday just to see what they thought. See if I could get any positive feedback on Alligator Alcatraz. ChatGPT, they didn't like it. They didn't like it at all. Here's DC Drano. President Trump, Governor DeSantis confirms Florida will deputize National Guardsmen as immigration judges. That's huge. Waiting 3 years for deportation decision. It will be made in less than 3 days at Alligator Alcatraz. And this is the real world we're living in, folks. Play the clip.
This is we're offering up our National Guard and other folks in Florida to be deputized to be immigration judges. We're working with the Department of Justice for the approvals. I'm sure Pam will approve. But then I'll have a National Guard judge advocate here. Someone has a notice to appear. Biden would tell them to come back in 3 years and appear. Now you'll be able to appear in like a day or two. So they're not going to be detained, hopefully, for all that long. We'll have people here in this facility that can make, it's a bureaucracy. The president's got to deal with the bureaucracy. Now, that Supreme Court ruling was good because that's going to allow him to be able to exercise Article 2 the way founders intended. But you still have bureaucracy. So we want to cut through that so that we have an efficient operation between Florida and DHS to get the removal of these illegals.
Can we just look at these two men's hair? I mean, there's not one single hair that's moved. If you've ever been in the Florida Everglades, there's some wind down there. Look at that. How much spray goes into that? Of course, Trump's got the hat on. He's got a little ducktail sticking out of that thing. These are the things I noticed. Nick Sorter says LMAO on his way to Alligator Alcatraz. President Trump says he's going to teach illegals how to run away from alligators. This is where he talks about the serpentine line. We talked about it this morning. Let's play a little clip of this.
With the Alligator Alcatraz, it's the idea that if some illegal immigrants escape, they just get eaten by an alligator or a snake or something.
I guess that's the concept. This is not a nice business. I guess that's the concept. If the snakes are fast, but alligators are, but we're going to teach them how to run away from an alligator, okay? If they escape prison, how to run away. Don't run in a straight line. Run like this. And you know what? Your chances go up about 1%.
How does he come up with this stuff? How does he come up with this stuff? I'm interested to see how this little experiment plays out. Trump reveals that they took the FEMA money that Joe Biden had allocated to be spent on luxury hotels for illegals in New York City. The Roosevelt Hotel, which is owned, of course, by Pakistani Airlines, that built Alligator Alcatraz. I mean, we've been sitting here with veterans out on the street, homeless, while they've been putting illegals up in hotels and giving them $5,800 debit cards. So I like the trend. I just got a text from Trump right here. Everybody else probably did too. They must want some money. It's 35,000 feet up in the air and thought of you. Before I land, will you answer this question? Oh, breaking 911. DHS Noam says ICE detained a cannibal who began to eat himself on a deportation flight. Play the clip. Can't make it up, folks. Here you go. Play it. Uh-oh. Come on, Christy. Talk to me. Talk to me, Christy. There you are. She's just spinning. Spinning. Maybe let's reset that sucker and try it again. I got to hear this story right here. This is great. Anyway, these are the people that if Trump were deporting this person, this would be the person that different lawmakers in Washington D.C. would go down there and want to visit and bring back. So, yeah, trying to eat himself. Wow, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. If you try to eat yourself, what part do you start with? I'd love to see you guys in the chat, what you have to say about that. Wow. Here's the deal. I'm going to let you guys go because we got started late. Let me just say this, guys, because I know that some of you patriots and you pissed off taxpayers, you're looking at the big, beautiful bill. You're looking at all this stuff. You're trying to figure out what to believe. Let me just have a little fireside chat with you, okay? This is what's been stewing. I said it last night on Higbee show, Carl Higbee on Newsmax. This is the thing. You watch the headlines roll in, and they're coming in like a freight train. I mean, it's crazy how many things are happening. You got bald eagles squawking in the background, and you got liberal tears falling. And here's what I'm thinking, and I said it earlier. When it comes to Trump, let the man cook. 80 million people voted for him. Let the man cook. I mean it. Take the leash off. Unchain the beast. Move the bureaucrats, the swamp rats, the alphabet boys out of the kitchen. Let Trump serve up the 5-star America First buffet that people ordered. Because this week was a Trump week. And if you blinked, you literally missed the greatness unfolding. It was one of the greatest weeks in presidential history. I mean, you got, what is it, 3.3 to 4.7, whatever the estimate is, trillion tax and spending bill passed by the Senate by a whisker. I saw somebody on X that says, what's J.D. Vance doing voting? That's his job, fool. That's what he's supposed to do. He is the tiebreaker. He's the head of the Senate. The guy said, the head of the Senate's supposed to do that. I was like, please, God, tell me this is a troll account. You can't be that stupid. So there he is casting a tie-breaking vote, 51 to 50. That's right. So you got Trump's tax policy. Just walked in the room like a rock star. The bill's going to extend 2017 tax cuts. It's going to slash the EV tax. It gives working class Americans a chance. Break on the tips and the overtime. You know, people are out there grinding while the elite sip the soy lattes in their NPR hoodies. And those that are whining about the safety net cuts, listen, I got a revolutionary idea for you. Are you ready for it? 3 words. Get a job. Simple. Maybe stop counting on Big Daddy government to spoon feed you and your stimulus like it's Gerber puree, okay? This bill isn't just money and math. It's a message. Trump's in the kitchen. He's not serving tofu. He's got steak. And there's a whole lot of sizzle in the size of shut up and work. And meanwhile, I mean, I'm watching MSNBC. I'm watching CNN. I don't like to do it. I just pucker my butthole and watch it. I just grind up and just clench and watch it. And they're in a full media meltdown. CNN's basically broadcasting from a padded room at this point in time. MSNBC hosts are chewing their fingernails down to the bone. This is fascism. No, Karen, it's called competent leadership, and you're just not used to it anymore. It's mean. Let me talk to you something. Trump's got the globe in checkmate. China blinked after Trump called out their spy base in Cuba. Suddenly, they're backpedaling harder than Anthony Fauci at a gain-of-function hearing. And guess what? Putin stopped rattling the saber after Trump and his team, floated all the stuff that they did last week through the air. Peace through strength. That's another white noise issue that we don't ever listen to it anymore. But it's a concept that it was as foreign to Joe Biden as his brain. Okay? You look at the economy. You got Wall Street that's been booming, doing great. Tariffs, they seem to be working. Corporate America is seeing a green light. Lower taxes, less regulation, a White House that doesn't hate its own country. That's an amazing concept, folks. You got blue-collar Americans out there that are feeling hope again. I know you're going to bitch and whine and moan about 1 or 2 things out there, but that's called being an American. That's just what we do. We wouldn't be anybody if we couldn't bitch and moan a little bit. But I do believe America's feeling some hope again. I mean, if people cheered in 2016, we ought to be downright electric right now. I mean, Bidenomics, Build Back Better, left people broke, drugged, and demoralized. Trump comes along like a defibrillator wrapped in an American flag and says, let's roll. And even Elon Musk, when you're going to throw a tantrum like that over the EV credit cuts, you're mad because Trump's not greasing the palms of green grifters anymore. No more handouts for billionaires pretending to save the planet while flying to Davos on private jets. That's the difference, folks. And you can fill in the blank on all this, all the wins from last week. Trump built skyscrapers. The left builds bureaucracies. I'm going to trust the guy that has done all that he's done, became a billionaire, married a supermodel, and built Manhattan. The other guys are building the swamp. He's created jobs. The others have created red tape, TikTok bans, and congressional hearings on gender pronouns. And you got the haters out there. They're mad. He's cutting Medicaid. He's cutting student loans. Yes, because if you're old enough to get an effing face tattoo and a liberal arts degree and a post-colonial dog yoga class, you're old enough to pay your own freaking bills. And don't even get me started on the bureaucrats, these unelected, pencil-pushing, regulation-humping swamp creatures that have had free reign for too long. You know what happens when Trump's off the leash? He fires them. He gets rid of them. He cleans house like a dad sick of his kids not moving the lawn. And thank God, because the country's been run by, wine moms with PhDs in minivans and feelings and whiteboards full of DEI garbage. Give Trump an opportunity to cook. You want results? Let Trump run like he's got nothing to lose, because he doesn't. Because I believe when he does, America wins. So let's give him a chance. The past week proved it. I mean, tax cuts, spending cuts, global strength restored, liberal freakouts. I like it. So let's be honest, Trump's not a politician. I don't like it when he tries to play politics either. I like the serpentine run away from the alligator method. He's a wrecking ball with a Constitution in one hand, a cheeseburger in the other. And if you think that's scary, you haven't been paying attention to what this country really needs. We don't need more consultants. We don't need no more rereads. We don't need more fists in the air. We don't need any more cities burning. We don't need any more riots or protests. We don't need any more focus groups. We don't need any pornography in our children's libraries. We don't need more bureaucrats writing 900-page bills nobody freaking reads. We need a leader with a flamethrower and the guts to use it. So, my fellow Americans, buckle the freak up. The chef is back, the kitchen is hot, and dinner's being served with a side of vengeance, victory, and vintage Trump. Let the man cook. If you're with me, let me see one of them American flags in there. Let me see some of them, man. Because again, you can't bet against the guy. How many? 91 indictments? Beat him. They raided Mar-a-Lago, took pictures. They framed the crap that came out of the bathroom. They set all that stuff up. They didn't do that with Joe Biden. They didn't do all that stuff with you. No, but they framed it. Oh, look at what all the stuff that Trump's got. Forget presidential immunity. He had this stuff. It was under lock and key. He'd gotten permission to do it. They knew it was there. That's why they came in there and raided. They went through his wife's freaking underwear drawer and looked through his son's belongings. And the man beat the shit out of him. Back and forth. Ask Letitia James if she's doing good today. Ask Fonnie Willis, what's her name? Fonnie, if she's doing okay today. Ask all of these crazy talking heads out there if they're doing okay today. They're not, because when you bet against Trump, you lose. And again, I've criticized Trump. I've said things about Trump, but there we are. There we are. And like, I don't trust this and I don't trust so. Shut up. Listen, there's nothing you can do about it, but let's let the man cook. That's the way I feel about it. I didn't vote for Elon Musk. I didn't vote for that. Glad he got on board. Glad he bought X. Glad he gave us a free speech, public square. Thank God for that. But at the end of the day, it was 80 million Americans, almost 80 million Americans who were sick of the gender warfare and the 80-20 issues and drag queen story hours with dudes, fat dudes, dressed up in tight silk dresses, slinging their wieners in front of your children back and forth. We don't want to see that stuff, man. We don't want to see that crap. We want to get back to some common sense values that made America great. And we believe it can make America great again. And if you don't like it, pack light, baby, hit the road, travel. Use one of those serpentine deals and get down in the Everglades and go down there and hang out with the illegals. I got to get Trump and JD to sign that right there. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Thank you for putting up with our technical difficulties, man. And I love you guys so much. Don't forget, watchchad.com. This Saturday night, I'll be in White House, Texas. Chad Prather's I Plead the 5th of July Comedy Bash. Jesse Payton will be with me. Of course, we're going to be out there sweating in White House. Bring your lawn chair and sit out there. We've got a couple hundred folks going to be out there. We'll add some more as we go. But get your tickets now, watchchad.com. Then I think I'm going to, Lowell, Arkansas for a couple of nights. Got a lot of stuff happening. A lot of stuff going on in Tennessee. We're going to be in Nashville. We're going to be in Toccoa, Georgia, coming back out to that theater. Beautiful, historic place. So tons of stuff going on through the summer. Check it out. Appreciate you guys so much. Go to where podcasts are offered. Leave us a rating and review over on Apple Podcasts. We like 5 stars. That's what we deserve. And don't forget to click like, hit subscribe, do all the things. Go over there. Hey, YouTube. Why did YouTube? Dadgummit. I was going to give them credit today, too. Yesterday, we hit the highest live numbers that we've hit in years on this show. I have been throttled. You guys have no idea the battle it has been to just bring this show to you. I mean, I've hung in there like a hair in a biscuit. And thank God for David Medina and his team, and David especially, man, who's just not only encouraged me every day, man to man, brother to brother, but he has worked hard to try to get this thing. We're going to be rebranding the Chad Prather Show. You're going to love it. We're going to be building out some stuff. It's going to be cool. There's going to be more opportunities for you guys to be participating in what we're doing here. It's going to be better, and we're getting everything back on track because, you know, I went independent almost 2 years ago. And it's been tough. And back during COVID, the Google overlords, they throttled me every way they could because I told you the truth. And guess what? I was right. But then I'm going to go back and say that, but I was right. And I encourage you guys to go look up the Resilient podcast with Chad Robichaud. It's a bad camera angle, man. They made me look so daggum fat on that deal. I hate it when they do the camera angle and you look at me from under here like this. And everybody's like, you got fat. No, I didn't. It's a camera angle. That's what we're going to blame it on, is the camera angle. And but no, go check out that podcast. It came out yesterday. We talked for a couple hours, and it was a great conversation. So just don't look at my fat face. And if you want to get in shape, brand new month. If you want to feel better, brand new month, join my Make Wellness team. Go to watchchad.com. Get the peptides. Get on the peptide train, baby. Whop-pow, right there. And the link for it is right there at the top. Right there at the top of watchchat.com. All right, I'm going to get out of here. I love you guys. I will talk to you tomorrow morning for the Dear America program. If Grandma let me, and I'll say something. And I don't forget Hot Seat Todd coming up here at the 3 o'clock hour. So I will jump on there later on. See you guys later. Have a good Tuesday night. God bless you. We talk.